Hello, everyone, and welcome to STOked, the ultimate Star Trek online podcast. My name is Chris.
And believe it or not, I'm still Jeremy.
Hey there, Jeremy.
Hi.
How the heck are you?
I'm great.
All right, well, we've got a lot coming up in this week's episode.
Do we?
First up, I'm excited to talk about the expanding universe.
Are you?
That's a topic, and then we've also gotten more concrete details on the death penalty. And then finally, the question that I think 90% of you have had for us: where does our Wrath of Khan uniform with the flap
The one that,
down,
the flap open.
where does that come from?
I would tell you guys quite honestly, let's do that story first because we get like 3 PMs a day
Yeah.
and emails and instant messages in game, and I think somebody even left us a voicemail about it asking
Yes.
where we got it.
Yes.
Now we know.
Now we know. Go ahead and say it. Give them the details here.
Everybody's supposed to have it. You know what? You guys all
Yeah.
asking us whether or not
Yeah.
you were supposed to have it. You are supposed to have it. Apparently, it was confirmed by Matt Hyacin, the lead character creator or character artist, that was something that wasn't ready at release, but it was supposed to come out later on for everybody that had the Wrath of Khan uniform. You're supposed to have the option, and it apparently never got enabled for everybody.
He made a post here in the forum, just kind of nonchalantly. Sorry about that. We're going to go ahead. We'll file a bug on that.
Yep.
We'll get back to you on that. So there's the official story. And then one other...
So stop asking us.
Yeah. Now you know. Now we're just going to refer you to this episode.
Yeah.
And one other note I want to make before we go on is if you're having some troubles with quality on YouTube, we've had a couple of encoding issues lately with some of our videos, so the quality never got to what it was supposed to. If you go over to our site, jupiterbroadcasting.com, we've got a nice high.
Right. If you're watching this on YouTube and it looks all grainy and stuff, then just go to our webpage.
We've got everything from iPod video to 720p HD ready for you to watch, including a nice new flash
Put it
player.
in your eyeballs and love it.
Yeah, it's like 3D without that third dimension.
Yeah.
All right, why don't we move on along? Now we'll go down to the expanding universe. So
yes,
this is a video series that Cryptic has been putting out, and I'm going to go on record. Now, not like I'm Mr. Production over here, because we're not, right?
Right. No, this is a terrible show.
Well, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Give us a little credit. We're not that bad. I mean, all right. Anyways, Cryptic's been getting better.
Why
and
is our
better.
background fuzzy anyway?
Because it's out of focus because we're in
right.
focus.
Right.
Right? That's the idea. Because it wouldn't both be. That'd be weird. All right.
Right.
So part 3 of the expanding universe has come out, and I think it looks pretty good.
You think the production quality
I think the production quality has gotten better and better with these episodes. But that's not really what we want to talk about. We want to talk about the content of this video.
This video basically focuses on two things: the Special Task Force, the Khitomer Accord, and the Special Task Force, the Undine Terroradrome, or Terradrome. I'm not sure what it is, Terra or Terror, or there's a dome.
Yeah.
I don't know which one it is. But anyway, the Khitomer Accord footage is only really noteworthy for one little thing right at the end of this footage.
Right. You're talking about the little thing. No
It's a
mention
little
is
spoiler.
made. Yeah.
They've been really keeping this under wrap, but if you look at the end of that video, you will see, should I tell them? Romulan Borg.
It's in the video. Yeah. There are
I won't say anymore.
assimilated Romulans. That's it. That's it.
And the other section is about the Terradrome that I think looks fantastically fun. I hope that they pull it off as well as it sounds that it's going to be, because basically the gist of the mission is that you go to their little training facility, and half of them are Undine in disguise, and the other half are hostages, and you have to figure out which are which.
Right. So they all look like Federation. They all look friendly.
They probably look like KDF if you're playing as a Klingon.
Awesome.
So you have to figure out which is which and kill the right ones and rescue the right ones.
Right.
Sounds like it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm watching the video, and one of the things too is the graphics look about the same, but it looks like there's more going on in the picture. Like everything looks like we've seen Star Trek Online look. It's just there seems to be more layers to it.
I think they're getting better at shooting actual footage. I think they're getting
better.
better.
It's just the video, they did the video better. I was thinking like the ground looked more detailed, like there was just more objects. Like they've
Maybe.
Like the scenery, like this shot right here, if you're watching the video version, there's just a lot more going on in the scene. It's a little more detailed, more textured. Like I don't know. It seems like maybe a little more time's been spent on these later missions.
That's possible.
Because it just seems more
All right, well, you guys can go check out the video. We won't dwell on it too much. We'll have the link in our notes, and you can just go to Star Trek Online.
We'll dwell on it
check
a little bit. But yeah, if you'd like to see the video yourself.
Oh, I wanted to mention one more thing. The Undine mission is not part of the big Borg story, so you don't have to have done Cured and Infected and Khitomer in order to participate.
Is it a new story, or is it just a standalone?
I think it might just be a standalone. It's also not made by the same team that made the other set, so it's going to be a little bit different in feel, and I'm really looking forward to it, seeing what they can pull off.
Before we go forward, we've got not really directly a Star Trek Online related story, but Leonard Nimoy has announced his plans for retirement this week.
The way that you prefaced it, I thought you were going to say that he had passed away.
Well, it's
you were really in mourning there.
I'm not. It's just that I totally respect, actually. One of the things that Leonard Nimoy said was that he's kind of stepping aside so it's fair to Zachary Quinto because, Zachary Quinto kind of gets put in the position of being in Spock's, in Prime Spock's shadow.
Yeah.
So I thought it was actually kind of a cool thing to say. And also, the time's come, but it hit me harder than I thought it would have when I saw Leonard Nimoy in the new Star Trek movie. When he's revealed for that first time, there's just this sense of,
when he's just driven off the...
I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
When I saw Leonard Nimoy for the first time, because I hadn't seen him playing that role in so long. Obviously...
With the bad hair and everything.
I like the hair in the new movie. I thought it looked more real than... But anyways.
Yeah.
I thought... I don't know, it was just... It hit me every time. I saw the movie in the theaters 3 times, and every time... the second time I went, I thought, okay, this time I'm going to be ready for it. And seeing him again...
And then he turns
powerful.
around and you were like, yeah.
Right. So to know that...
He's not going to be there in the sequel that they've already been talking about.
So that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah. But at least he was there for the first one. They've done this. That's kind of a
handoff.
A handoff thing that they've done a lot.
They did that with
DeForest Kelley was in the first episode of Next Generations.
Sure.
Yeah. Kirk was in Generations. They do it a lot. There's been other actors that appeared. Armin Shimmerman appeared in the first episode of Voyager as a handoff from DS9.
As what?
I think it was him.
What was he doing?
I don't remember exactly.
I'll have to look that up because that'd be cool.
Yeah. But Patrick Stewart was in the first episode of DS9.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's kind of become a tradition to kind of get the ball rolling. Tell the old fans this is we remember you.
I'm going to go on record totally. Sorry, we'll move on. One last thing before we go from Leonard Nimoy is we're fortunate to have such a great catalog still to appreciate his work. So
yeah,
this is one of those things where his original works, along with the rest of the cast, are going to be so strong that
and he's going to keep appearing on Fringe for a while if you like that show.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So side note, real quick, DS9 probably one of the best Star Trek opening 2 episodes.
Yeah,
I really liked it. Enterprise was not bad too. All right, last story. That's kind of not really a story. Is we're just going to mention it really quick. There's been some details of what's coming up in season 2. Some really cool things that are going to be changing the game.
It's not an official announcement, but it's
so
basically the devs hanging out on the forums have kind of mentioned things.
It's maybe this stage kind of the idea form. So we don't want to cover it on the show as official news. So that way we don't want to get anybody's expectations up.
Right.
But if you'd like to hear more about that, there will be a thread over at JupiterColony.com in our STOked section on that. You can check that out. And then anything else before we
we didn't mention the death penalty. We asked you guys to give us your input on how you would like to see the death penalty implemented. And then, the day after we filmed it, Cryptic released it all.
They gave us the answer.
So we're not going to be sharing your mail about that because it's kind of a moot point right now. Good ideas, some of you.
Yeah.
And you know what? Some of you guys are vicious.
They want to be punished, is what you're saying. Yeah. There's those people out there. They like it. They like to be punished.
I was reading some of those emails and I was like, really?
Yeah. I was thinking also of doing, and I'd love to hear your feedback on this. I was thinking about doing blog posts of some of the best emails we get. So ones we can't feature in the show, maybe we could post in a blog, maybe with a quick comment or something like that. If people be interested in that, let us know.
Maybe, or maybe even just a forum post or something like that.
Or it'd be a good JupiterForce.org front page thing, possibly.
If we actually used our front page.
It's a good use for that. So death penalties, what do we want to say? Normal.
Well,
it's going to be tied with the difficulty slider.
Right, and they recently just decided, within the last couple days, that on normal difficulty level, there is no death penalty. So basically, if you play the game at normal level, it'll continue being the exact same STO that it's always been. Yeah. No increase in difficulty and no death penalty. And to be honest, don't like that.
Yeah,
I could go on a pretty lengthy rant about the fact. They intended to change the game's structure to implement something that was going to change the whole way that the game felt, and then they just make it optional. Well, then, what's all the work for?
I totally see where you're going. Now,
I see this, honestly, as the developers caving to their fans. Now, on some level, you have to. On some level, you have to give the players what they want. But on another level, a project needs to be your own, right? Don't you think?
Here's the thing. And I'm going to get flamed in the forums for this. But it's just the reality of the situation. The mistake was in not putting it in at the beginning.
Right.
To take something away, which I realize some people might not see it like that, to take something away at this point would piss off such a larger percentage than the people in the forums who are going to be upset that it's not mandatory.
So you think that they kind of had to take this out in order to...
You just like, you don't... It's like Sony removing the Linux option from the PlayStation 3s. Once you give a game something, or once you give a product something, you don't take that back, or else you piss people off that bought it.
Yeah.
And people in the forums are going to agree with you, and I agree with you only in the sense that I think they should have always had it that way.
Right.
I mean, it should never have been optional. But now that they've done it, they have to make it optional.
Because...
And I think that's just the reality, because I think...
But then what about changes they make down the line? What if they implement something where you have to buy a certain skill to do,
there's different things. If you're doing something that's a gameplay mechanic, that's one thing. But when you're doing something that makes the game fundamentally harder,
this game has to be harder.
Dude, no, I agree. I totally agree. But the thing is you're coming at it from the perspective of probably the top 10% in the game.
Why, thank you.
Well, I'm just saying probably the people watching.
Top 10%.
Probably people watching are at least in the top 40. No, I'm just saying we're actually the minority by a pretty huge margin.
I accept that. Yeah.
So we got to realize there's more people out there that are playing it for the Star Trek aspect and not for the gaming, and they would be the people to be really upset.
Yeah.
You and we're going to totally take advantage of this.
Yeah.
I am never going to play the game on normal again.
Right.
So that's
so we need to know the details of the penalties, the death penalty system and everything.
So normal means no death and basically no change at all. And
the rest of the system is what they're calling an injury system, where basically every time you get defeated, either on ground or in space, you have a chance of incurring a debuff to a certain subsystem or stat. I haven't actually played with this yet, so I'm not sure how well it works or how the percentages work. But they say that
kind of how it works in WoW. Like, don't you have
you
have a global debuff for?
Only if you choose to resurrect yourself without retrieving your corpse.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Which probably you do all the time because you're lazy.
No, I hate debuffs. I ran back to that damn body as a wisp. That was boring, but I did it.
But you know what? This is a direct ripoff of the standalone title Dragon Age.
Oh yeah.
Interestingly enough, a BioWare title. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Okay.
But I think we're ready to move on.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
I guess so. I'm glad to see it being implemented. I'm just going to leave it at that. And the one thing I was...
honestly, I actually think it's a little light.
Here's what I was hoping for. You helped me put it into words earlier today. I was hoping normal mode was just incentive not to die. And you really helped me focus this earlier today when you said they could have done the point system you get in Champions Online, where you get a certain amount of stars the longer you've been living.
In that case, it's not a death penalty; it's a life bonus.
It's an incentive to live.
Yeah,
and I think that would have been perfect for normal.
And already built into the engine, if you think about it.
Well, it's in the Champions one at least. And so incentivize me to live, but then when I ratchet that difficulty, then make it harder. Mm-hmm. But not to do anything on normal, I think, is the mistake. And I'll just put that out there. That's
because one of the reasons that I've been a proponent of the death penalty for so long is because I feel it's going to make people play better. And I've seen, truth be told, I played with a lot of really bad players.
Well, and how many times do you know, especially like when people are fighting the crystalline entity, when they get down to around 20% hull, they just go for death. Yeah. They're just going to go for their warp core. Yeah. But now when you introduced even a stupid star incentive that maybe gives me a small percent on something.
In Champions Online, when you have your max bonus, it's 5% damage. 5.
But that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
And I would strive for that. And I try not to die as it is, but I die. And at 20%, if I'm fighting something like the crystalline entity, I'll probably just go for it because it's quicker to respawn and be back up to 100%. Yeah. But if you give me that little tiny carrot not to die, I'll do it.
Right.
I'll work it.
That's all it needs to be. It doesn't even have to actually have a tangible impact. It's just something that reminds you died, and that's a failure. Yeah. So try harder next time.
Right. And you know what would be, and expose my stars to the other players. So when they click me, my stars show. Right?
That's mean, but I like it.
Because then I can just look and you go, oh, you're dying all the time. You know, just a little bit extra. But all right. Yeah. Okay, well, so now let's move on to the math segment. What do we got coming up in math?
We are going to shoot you in the face with cannons. In this math segment, I'm going to be covering the pros and cons of each separate type of cannon weapon. So this will be primarily geared towards escort captains, but I think everybody will find it a little bit enlightening. I hope. If nothing else, then you'll at least be able to understand some of the different weapon types and the associated strategies that some of your group mates might use or your enemies in PvP. So there are 3 types of cannons. There's the basic cannon that's just called, funnily enough, cannons. There's also dual cannons and dual heavy cannons. There is a 4th type of cannon that is not escort specific, and those are turrets. These benefit from all the cannon-related skills and abilities, but can be equipped on any ship. Be careful about loading up too many turrets on your ship, though, because due to their 360-degree arc, they drain energy like a mofo. So if you see your energy dropping, swap out a turret. Okay, the cannons. The first type is, of course, like I said, the basic cannon. Now, these have a much lower overall DPS than the other types of cannons you can fit on your escort, but they benefit from a much wider firing arc. That's not so useful for most escort captains, though, as you're generally facing your opponent anyway. And if you're not, beam arrays actually have a higher base damage and may end up hitting harder. But cannons can benefit from your skills and abilities, so generally this choice is kind of up to your playstyle. If the wider arc would benefit your piloting style and you're heavily invested in cannon skills and buff abilities, you might look into these. It's not my personal choice or recommendation, however, so for the purposes of the rest of this discussion, I'm going to focus solely on the pros and cons of dual cannons and dual heavy cannons. Now, each of these dual type of cannons deal the same base DPS, or damage per second, but heavies deal that damage in fewer, heavier bursts of fire and draw slightly more energy per burst. However, despite this slightly higher energy drain, you'll actually end up being more able to sustain your rate of fire easily using dual heavy cannons in lieu of dual cannons. The reason for this is the slower rate of fire. There's less uptime, more regen time. You see, a DHC fires for only 1 second and recharges for 2, splitting up the amount of time that you need to regenerate your energy into 2-second chunks. So in essence, instead of 12, it's 6 energy per second that you need to regenerate in order to keep topped off. Whereas with dual cannons, they only fire for 1 second and recharge for only 1 second, requiring you to regenerate the full 10 energy to stay topped off. Now, the difference in rate of fire in these 2 types of cannons also bleeds over into several other areas that I'll attempt to cover in more detail here. The first of these is properly utilizing your firing arc. You see, cannons have a very tight firing arc in front of your ship. The bursty approach of the dual heavy cannon allows you to potentially output closer to your entire damage potential while your enemy is maneuvering in and out of your firing arcs. If you're up against an agile enemy ship and they keep dipping in and out of your target zone only long enough for you to fire a single projectile, well, that single projectile is going to do a massive amount more damage on a dual heavy cannon than it will on a dual cannon. On the other hand, a miss with a heavy cannon is going to show a much more significant dip in your damage over time than a single miss would with a dual cannon. Now, next we're going to talk about critical striking a little bit. Now, this part of the episode isn't really math per se, it's more like statistics. But according to the popular theory and generally accepted knowledge, critical hits are where dual cannons really shine in the long run. By firing twice as frequently as dual heavy cannons, folks say that they end up doing more damage over time based on your chance of critical strikes. The math doesn't support this, but that's what people claim. I'm going to go with it for now. By extending this logic, skills and abilities that increase your chance to crit and your severity of crits will skew your overall character profile slightly in favor of duals over dual heavies. Now, keep in mind that the dual heavy cannons actually come with a built-in boost to crit severity, which means when they do crit, they crit even harder. Now, this may be enough to even the odds. The math suggests that crits don't matter one way or another since it's all based on the same base DPS, but statistics and math don't always see eye to eye, and I haven't found a solid answer on this variable. Now, the other end of this confusion is a straight-up percentage increase in the damage dealt, which seems to swing you back in favor of the dual heavy cannons again. Abilities like Tactical Team and Attack Pattern Omega have a flat percentage increase to damage, which suggests they can be better utilized by dual heavy cannons. Fewer shots, bigger hits, and after all, 5% of 100 is bigger than 5% of 50. You follow me? Now, it's not a huge favor towards dual heavy cannons. To be honest, every ability you can get is only a slight difference one way or another. Now, what about rapid fire, you say? Well, this is kind of a weird ability. First of all, it causes you to fire twice as many bullets from dual cannons, 8 versus 4, but only 1.5 times as many from dual heavy cannons, 3 versus 2. So, wait, what? Well, that seems to skew the math heavily in favor of dual cannons, but because it also reduces the cooldown on your cannons, the math actually works out to be almost even. Now, I could go into all the numbers, but I don't feel like it. The real determining factor here is if you're really fond of rapid fire, which I am, is your energy drain. Just like I mentioned earlier, dual heavy cannons are easier to maintain in the long run than dual cannons, and this difference is magnified when you boost the rate of fire by using this ability. Now, the other area where dual cannons really outshine their dual heavy cannon compatriots is when you're looking at the special abilities that every weapon type has. You see, every single projectile that you shoot out of your ship has the exact same percentage chance of applying that debuff, but things like plasma fire stack, and the disruptor debuff, as another example, is refreshed every time it activates. So the bottom line is this: more shots equal more chances to proc the special ability. There's your math for you. More bullets equals more stuff. So the higher rate of fire is better. So, in conclusion, there is no conclusion to draw from this. Now, I personally encourage the use of dual cannons, but the difference in raw numbers is minuscule if it's present at all. But if you just really like big numbers, and I can't fault you for that, then stick with the dual heavy cannons. Doing so will not handicap your overall damage output. In fact, as I said, they come slightly ahead in the energy drain department. And that's all I got for you, ladies and gentlemen. Until next week, you got mathed.
It is now time for our mail segment. Last week, we asked you to write us about your ideas for PvP. Right? And
yeah, we did. Persistent PvP, large scale.
Right. That was something we floated and we talked about last episode. And we got a lot of feedback, so thank you very much for that. And stay
I'll be quite honest.
Segment for
in the last week or so, we've probably gotten more feedback from that single episode than we've gotten since beta. So yeah, thanks, and we'll keep asking you questions. We'll have another one for you.
Yeah, we have another one coming up. But so let's kind of talk about the feedback we got regarding PvP.
Well, you know what? It was pretty amazing that everybody pretty much had the same ideas. On some level or another, there were some differences.
But like 90% of them all boiled down to like two major concepts.
Yeah, it was basically like a sector, like a neutral zone sector, like let's say Eta Eridani that already exists. But each individual system would be some sort of a battle node. Every time somebody would win a single node, that would fall under control, and then maybe there would be some overarching reason to control more nodes than the other. Yeah. But it all was boiled down. Everybody's ideas, though a little different on the individual side, were all.
We should mention we were going to mention this towards the end of this, but the Darren Killer, or I think is how you say his name.
His form name is Darren Kitlor. I think.
He made some pretty interesting visuals to kind of back up what you're saying.
Yeah, and his system is very involved. He spent a lot of time on this, so I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, it's kind of a way to really visualize some of these concepts that probably are the best way to communicate with the player base. Now, again,
every version of a large scale PvP, there's always going to be a few problems that everybody can point out. Maybe it's not exactly what they want, but so this system might not be entirely up your alley. But the fact that he's got visuals to really represent, again, maybe props. I'm just a sucker for pictures, but props to him.
I say props.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to. So picture what we just showed you while we're talking about this. So
now the second thing that everybody was talking about and was very adamant, and like 90% of you again mentioned, is a different layer of rewards for the overall sector size PvP. Instead of just rewarding people for individual PvP matches, so they just do a match and move on.
Yeah.
But for actually being involved in long scale conflicts, the back and forth between one faction or the other.
Global PvP awards,
right?
That are not instance dependent,
and even if it's something like if you control more systems than let's say if the Klingons control more systems at the end of a 6-hour span, then they get a 2-hour experience buff or something like that.
I'm just going to put this out there, and this is a World of Warcraft thing again. I apologize, everybody. I won't do it for 2 more episodes. I'll take a break.
Holding you to that.
Yeah. You know how like you could have a reputation in a town? Well, wouldn't it be awesome to have maybe not a reputation, but like maybe make it like some sort of Starfleet accommodations or something for like the hero of this sector. And it's just, if you've participated in PvP a certain amount of times and you've had enough victories, maybe you have a reputation of X for this sector.
Yeah,
it'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, that could be neat.
It'd be, and then because it
also gives you an incentive to participating in multiple different sections of large scale battles. Like let's say they use back. Yeah,
and that's the thing that I think you really got to hook people is because right now for me with PvP, I kind of played the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And I haven't touched it.
And there's certain maps that you just don't want to play anymore because it's the same thing over and over, right?
Yeah,
and you know the tricks.
I've done it all, and it's like, and I'll occasionally just join up in a queue just to do it, but there's no real incentive for me other than XP.
Right.
But if you gave me like just one more carrot reputation or something, it'd be cool.
And again, that's another benefit of having a large scale persistent PvP environment. Now, another thing that somebody brought up, and this one was actually, very few of the emails that we get are actually worth quoting or worth bringing up on a one-on-one basis, because so many of you guys actually end up saying the same thing.
We're not complaining so much.
No, that's actually really cool. I think it's neat to see that so many of you agree on the same things. But this guy had an idea for open PvP, like based on a flag type system. So you could choose whether or not you were, what the terms he used were overt and covert. So you could fly around as covert and be able to do everything just like normal, just like a PvE system as it currently is. But if you were an overt player, then if you ran into a member of an opposite faction, it would automatically start up a deep space encounter type map, and the two of you would start going at it.
Very cool.
The loser would lose their overt flag. Now, this is the reason that I found this so interesting, because that prevents any form of griefing, because if you lose a match, you're forced out of the overt status, and you have like a timer, so you can't get back into it. So you can't be corpse camped because you lost your flag. So now you're back to the normal PvE system.
All right.
Plus, it's a very real penalty on the way that you want to play, because if you want to be a PvPer, you want to have your flag on. If you lose, even though you don't lose anything, you lost your flag.
Right.
That's a real penalty.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
I know. That's why I brought it up. So that guy's name was Barry Neville or Neville. Props to you.
Hope you don't mind we use your last name, Barry.
Yeah, well, I hope it's fake.
I
didn't tell him where you're from. It's cool.
Yeah, he's from Seattle.
No, he's not.
No, I don't know. He's from Vancouver. All right.
He's British.
Let's talk about the question we want to ask everybody.
Yeah.
What?
So Cryptic came out recently with their own interiors poll. They set up a number of options that you could choose from and tell us which you think is the most important of the following choices for when they start to implement new ship interiors. Cool.
The floor plan, the mood, the era. The era was interesting to me because they mentioned TOS or the original series.
Well, you know what? If you're flying around in the TOS Connie, you're only a lieutenant,
right?
But you want the Connie bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is cool. We've got a link. Go participate in the poll, because they do pay very close attention to these things.
Yeah, and I want to see if you guys agree with their results and maybe get a little more granular. So, like specifically, they mentioned here
granular. Good word.
Well, so what I'm saying is, like, they mentioned here, 43% of people voted for functionality over everything else.
Right.
And it's kind of nebulous. So
it is.
If you voted for functionality, at what point does that give? For example, if for functionality purposes they need to make the corridors 4 times as large than they should be, or engineering needs to be 8 times as big as it should be, so that way the camera doesn't get stuck on the warp core, is that okay?
Right. If it works, like if there's something that you can actually
do down there, like if you could actually go down there and there was like a way to get more aux power or something.
What if the new crafting system involved you having to go to different parts of your ships and actually, assemble things and things like that?
That would be amazing.
Right. Or maybe even if it's still going to be memory alpha, could you use your ship as an alternative to it?
Yeah.
Something like that. That's still functionality, but would you be willing to accept, like Chris said, the large corridors, the non-authentic?
What if it's just go to sickbay to buy hypos and stuff?
Yeah, something simple, but it's still functional.
But
there's a reason to go.
43% of people voted for functionality over every other aspect.
So tell us.
What do you mean?
Yeah, give us the details. Send us your email to STOked@JupiterBroadcasting.com and get very detailed. And if you've got a great idea, you might be the next Barry Neville.
There you have it. Also, be sure to check out JupiterColony.com. That's where you could also find discussions in there.
So see you next week.